The danger of huge radiation releases from Fukushima nuclear plant has taken on a new dimension, and the world community must step in. That's what over 150,000 signatories are saying on a petition delivered to the United Nations this month. 2 years after an earthquake and tsunami caused a meltdown at the Fukushima Daiichi plant in March 2011, Japanese authorities have recently revealed that the crippled plant has radiation leaks strong enough to deliver a fatal dose within hours. The plant's leaking tons of toxic water into the Pacific. And Harvey Wasserman and his colleagues at nukefree.org say the disaster needs to be taken out of the hands of the Japanese operators.
We need the United Nations at the General Assembly level to take action at Fukushima. The government of Japan cannot do it. The electric power company cannot do it. We need the resources of our species, the best engineers, the best scientists, and all the money in the world to stop this horrible disaster at Fukushima and all the other nuclear plants around the earth. This transition to a renewable-based economy must start now.
What does all of this say about the prospect of safe nuclear power? Some leading scientists concerned about climate change continue to argue nuclear is a good alternative. On this and more, we're happy to welcome author and activist Harvey Wasserman back to Grit TV. Harvey, welcome.
Great to be with you again, Laura.
So we saw you there, a little clip of video of you outside the United Nations.
Right.
How long did that petition take to get together?
Just a matter of weeks. I put it up, and within less than a month, we had 115,000 at Move On, 40,000 at Roots Action. The Green Shadow Cabinet pulled in a couple hundred organizations. It just flew. Well,
the exciting thing about your petition was it got me, at least, to start paying attention to what was happening at Fukushima. And when I went back and looked at not the US press, but the international press, I was terrified.
Well, you should be terrified. It's a mind-boggling situation at Fukushima. This is my 40th year fighting nuclear power. I hate to say it. Back when we coined the phrase "no nukes" in 1973. And we never, all the years we've been dealing with nuclear power, no one ever talked about 3 simultaneous meltdowns and 4 explosions at a single reactor site. And plus, this is not a Soviet reactor situation. These are General Electric reactors. There are 24 in the United States virtually identical to Fukushima 1, which did melt and did explode, and there are a number of others that are very similar.
What is the situation at Fukushima, and how is it affecting world waters and food?
Well, part of the problem with the situation at Fukushima is we don't know everything. The site is controlled by Tokyo Electric Power, which is a private corporation.
That's TEPCO.
TEPCO, and then the infamous TEPCO, and then the government of Japan is on top of that, and the government of Japan has been very unforthcoming about information from the Fukushima site. So
well, I'm sure they've been very busy trying to apply for the Olympics.
Yes, well, they won that, unfortunately. They may have to rescind that at some point in time, but the Japanese government right now has a very pro-nuclear administration, and they're causing us a lot of problems. I believe we got better information from the Soviet Union about Chernobyl than we're getting from TEPCO and the Japanese about Fukushima.
But even the information we are getting this summer, revelations, 300 tons of toxic water leaked in one leak, and then in other news, the fact that 300 tons are leaking into the Pacific daily.
Every day. And this is for 2.5 years now, and there is no end in sight. It could go on, as Dr. Helen Caldicott has said, for 50 years. We've already detected radiation from Fukushima off the coast of Alaska. There was a study of 15 tuna caught off the coast of California. Out of the 15 tuna caught, 15 had radiation from Fukushima.
Radiation enough to be dangerous?
Yes. You wouldn't want to eat this tuna. I mean, this is really, really serious, Laura. I'm getting, I edit nukefree.org. I look through the internet every day. I'm getting reports from the Pacific that I can only refer to as apocalyptic. Major dead zones, radiation being detected all over the place. You know, radiation, even small doses, cesium, strontium, iodine, will bioaccumulate. And so if you get a small dose, a relatively small dose into some seaweed, fish will come, they'll eat enough seaweed that it'll be significant. They will be eaten up the food chain. We're at the top of the food chain. This is very, very serious.
And then when I looked into it further, it turns out that this month, the government of Japan is responding to this crisis of the summer and saying, well, we're going to take action. They one of the actions they seem to be taking is this complicated-looking spent fuel replacement
Well,
procedure.
this is a major crisis. We finally got an article in the New York Times about it. It's been blacked out in the American major media. Thank God for your show and for the internet. There is a spent fuel pool 100 feet in the air. Brilliant design. John King at CNN called it a bathtub on the roof. Has no containment over it. And when the earthquake tsunami hit, Unit 4 had the fuel out. They were doing an inspection. It was in this pool, and a lot of it's very, very radioactive. And the stuff has been suspended 100 feet in the air since the accident.
2 years.
It actually caught fire at one point. They had to pour in seawater, which is corrosive. There's debris in the pool. We don't know the status of the fuel rods, and it has to come out of there because if, God forbid, another earthquake, well, we know another earthquake will hit at some point, if one is strong enough to knock these fuel rods to the ground. They are clad in zirconium alloy, which will catch fire if it's exposed to air spontaneously. Zirconium is the stuff that was in flash cubes that burn very brightly, very quickly. If there's a fire of this stuff, there has been shown to be enough cesium, radioactive cesium in these rods to exceed the releases at Hiroshima by a factor of 14,000. We're talking about huge radiation releases. So these rods have to be brought to the ground. It's never been done under these kind of circumstances.
And the TEPCO company released an animated graphic that we found at the Guardian website. Look at it for just a second.
A milestone is being reached in the recovery of Fukushima Daiichi. For the first time since the accident, spent fuel will be removed from the damaged building and stored in a safer, more secure way in these specially designed containers. Moving the spent fuel out of the damaged reactor building and into safe, permanent storage lays the groundwork for moving forward with cleanup and remediation of the damaged building.
I mean, looking at that, are you really saying the UN could do this better and should step in and do this instead?
Well, the problem is we're, not only between the rock and a hard place, the rock has fallen on us. I mean, essentially, you have more than 1,300 fuel rods that are radioactive in there. And in order to get them out properly, they have to be in decent shape because you got to pull them out of an array. And so if they're bent, if they're warped, if they're embrittled, if they're swollen, we don't know if they're going to come out. And they have to come out.
Is it the UN any better equipped to do this than TEPCO?
Yeah. Well, TEPCO is a private corporation. They're still in it for the money. I mean, Arnie Gunderson, a great nuclear engineer, wrote them and said months ago and said, you got to dig a trench between the mountain where the water is rushing through at the rate of 300 tons a day and the plant so you can divert the water. They wrote him back and they said, you know what, we don't have enough money. So we have to have a situation where there's, unlimited funds, and that's not TEPCO. That's not even the Japanese government.
So who is it?
It has to be the world community, this vague entity. We have to have all the best scientists, all the best engineers, and unlimited money to deal with this. This is an apocalyptic event.
All right, so you gathered 150,000 signatories on a petition asking for exactly that, but concretely, what do you want in terms of action and by whom?
We have to figure out a way to get the fuel rods out of Unit 4. We have to decommission Units 3, 2, and 1. We have to find, I never thought I'd hear myself saying this, we have to find out where the melted cores from Units 1, 2, and 3 actually are. We have 3 missing cores.
But who's the we here?
The world community. I mean, they've got us, the Pacific Ocean is at stake here. I know that sounds, well, we've already lost the Gulf of Mexico. So we have a little training in this already. The Pacific Ocean is at risk.
Well, so
that radiation will be in California within a year.
So the Atomic Energy Commission, who?
Well, there's an International Atomic Energy Agency at the UN, and this is the problem we have. If we petition the United Nations to take action, they're going to refer us to the International Atomic Energy Agency, but the IAEA has a mandate to promote nuclear power. And this is why all the studies by the UN World Health Organization don't show the correct health impacts of atomic radiation. They're not an objective source.
All right, so I'm getting increasingly discouraged here, Harvey.
Well, look, we've been dealing with this a long time. We knew something like this was going to happen, and this is even a worst-case scenario where I got to tell you, if, God forbid, an earthquake, if the earthquake that hit, that caused the tsunami 120 kilometers off the coast of Japan had been 20 miles or 2 miles, the Fukushima site could have been turned to rubble.
This is all taking place against the continuing discussion around climate change. And it also has to be said that there are some very high-placed scientists, some of the people who've helped alert the world to the perils of climate change. I'm thinking of James Hansen of NASA, and others from around the world who recently petitioned the environmental organizations this fall and said, you know what, you've got to reconsider nuclear power because wind and solar just can't meet our needs.
They have not done their homework. Wind, solar, tidal, what I call solartopia, the mix of green energies can, in fact, meet our energy needs. They just haven't looked at Germany. They haven't looked at Amory Lovins's work. This has been known for a long time. The renewable solartopian industry has a tremendous rise in efficiency and a plummeting in cost. It's all right there. They also have not assessed the true global warming impacts of nuclear power, which are considerable. Plenty of carbon emissions in the mining, milling, enrichment, and waste management process. And the cost of the reactors is out of control. They can't get insurance. It is not a viable option.
But what about the next generation of nuclear power plants? Obama tells us there's 2 new ones in the works that will be better, safer, smaller, a whole different generation.
It's a myth. You know, they're saying the same stuff about those nuclear plants that they said about the original ones 50 years ago. It's not going to happen. The money's not there. We've seen those technologies. They've failed. You know, Bill Gates and Paul Allen from Microsoft put in a few $100 million. Pocket change to them. They'll write it off their taxes. They'll spend and spend and spend public money. It'll fail, and we'll have to clean up the mess. The reality is that renewables do work. Nuclear power is a disaster. It's going to continue to be a disaster, and thankfully we have the solar option, the solartopian options in hand.
You got a message to the athletes? Should they go to Tokyo?
I wouldn't. I was in Japan in the mid-'70s. I actually wrote an article about Fukushima in 1977 in the Progressive magazine. Everybody in Japan was saying, why are you building a nuclear plant in an earthquake tsunami zone? TEPCO and the Japanese said, don't worry, it won't happen, we can handle it. Now they're saying the same thing about a new generation of reactors. There's every reason not to believe them. We do have the options. I won't go back to Japan. I loved Japan. I would not go there. If I had relatives there, I'd tell them to leave. And it's only going to get worse. This is 2.5 years in. The situation in Fukushima is worse than it was when the accident first started. We have a serious situation, Laura.
Harvey, thanks for frightening me even more.
Well, there's always a solution. I am optimistic. This is a tough one.
You can find out more at nukefree.org.